show must go on, and here we are still showing some wonderful movies. And it's in times like these that it's really wonderful to come together as a community and enjoy the things we love, like watching beautiful, wonderful classic movies. And I know we have a very much more well-known movie going on next door, but I thank you all for coming to a beautiful art film like this. I don't think I have to share any of this with any of you because you're here, but of course there's something called the French New Wave, the cinematic movement of the 1960s and 70s that was all about artful, very human stories made by great French filmmakers like François Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard. Now, what they tried to do was tell very human, very realistic, very kitchen sink type stories about very real people. Now, the filmmaker Jacques Demy tried to do something very different in the French New Wave. He was all about taking the fantasy and imagination of movies and turning them up to a whole new level. And he made two very famous, very important musicals in the history of cinema. We've shown one, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, back in 2014, and now we're showing the second, The Young Girls of Rochefort. Now, where Umbrellas of Cherbourg tries to show the darkness that can be told with the musical, Umbrellas of Rochefort, Young Girls of Rochefort, I feel, goes back to the total fantasy of the musical. It's all song and dance, and it's all very happy and very pleasant and very choreographed, and it's much more American than Umbrellas of Cherbourg is. So a lot of people call this the sequel to the Umbrellas of Cherbourg. It's pretty different. I wouldn't call it the sequel to the Umbrellas of Cherbourg. It's a completely different story with completely different characters, but it does have a lot of the same elements. The heavy use of color, the beautiful music by Michel Legrand. They worked together again 3 years after Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and it has some of the same cast. Most importantly, the gorgeous Catherine Deneuve. Now, this movie marks the only pairing of Catherine Deneuve and her sister, Françoise d'Orléac, who was also a very famous and very popular French actress. She didn't achieve the superstardom of her sister because just 3 months after she completed this movie, she passed away at just 25 in a car accident. Very sad story. The other thing, going back to this being a much more American type of musical, is that he filled it with very famous American musical actors, most notably Mr. Gene Kelly. This is his first musical in over a decade, and as you'll see, he still is the enormously charismatic, sexy, wonderful, handsome, dancing man that we know from 10 and even 20 years prior. He did help with the choreography on the film, and it was upon Demy's request that the choreography be very stylized, as it was all the way back in the 1940s and 50s when Gene Kelly was dominating the movie musical. Also with George Chakiris and Grover Dale. The movie that we're closing the festival with next Sunday is La La Land, and we're trying to include several movie musicals that influenced that enormously popular movie from just a few years ago. Umbrellas of Cherbourg and Young Girls of Rochefort are the two movies that Damien Chazelle lists most frequently as the primary influences for that very popular film. Any questions? Any quick questions or comments about this movie before we get started? All right.